Good morning, Gooners. My name is Grover, and welcome once again to another episode of the Rip Roaring Reds. You're joining us in between the netherworld, the ether between Christmas and New Year. Arsenal are over 24 hours removed from beating Ipswich 1-0 at the Emirates. If you're joining us for the first time, please do give this video a like. Please do give the channel a subscribe, and please do give us a comment down below what you thought about Arsenal's possibly drab victory against Ipswich. Before we get into all of that, Jace, how are you doing on this fine Sunday morning?
Yeah, I'm good. Voice back partially, though it might go during the podcast. So I'm going to apologise in advance if you hear me suddenly lose my voice. Lovely Christmas. Looking forward to New Year. And we got the win, which I guess is the most important thing. But there's a lot to discuss today about whether we can keep winning.
Yeah, well, I mean, and the fact of the matter is that you said your voice is back, and that's probably because you weren't doing a great deal of shouting at the grounds. Is that would that be a fair assessment?
I mean, I had to be very cautious anyway about how much I shouted, but I think it's a fair analysis to say that there wasn't. Well, boring Arsenal was the chant. I'm sure we'll get onto it. So yeah, there wasn't much to discuss from an attacking threat in that game.
Yeah, enough to get into, and we're going to talk about it right now. We're going to get into what we do every single pod. We're going to start it with a Rip Roaring review. A Rip Roaring review is your reflection on Arsenal as of right now, either the game, what's happening, what's going on. I'm going to crack us off because I think Jace's might kind of feed off of mine somewhat or a little bit. I just had a bit of I think me and Jason in the green room discussed this briefly beforehand. Seen the same stats being wheeled off for the 2024 in reflection for Arsenal. And that is for us. We've scored the most goals. We've conceded the least goals. We've got the most points. And we've won the most games. Yet here we are sitting on December the 29th with not a trophy to show for it. And I think that on reflection, it's been a somewhat, I think, and recency bias will come into this as well, of course. But it's been an incredible year and another year of kind of growth and trajectory for us. I feel this season has been somewhat dampened by silly red cards, by injuries, by odd refereeing. And that's put us in a position where we're a little bit off the pace, but we're still up and amongst it, which is what, if you'd have asked me and you, Jace, right, when we started going to games probably like 15 years ago or so, where would you have wanted us to be at that time when you look back at maybe like 2008 Arsenal, 2009 Arsenal? Where would you just want us to be? And you'd want us to be up and against the big guns and be performing and, trying to compete for trophies. We would have wanted it. Obviously, we want to win it. But I would just, on reflection of this year, I do feel it's still on the right trajectory. I still believe Arteta is the right manager. I still believe questions might get asked and definitely will get asked at the end of the season if we come away with no silverware, whatever that silverware might be. But in reflection, 2024 for me has been a really good year for Arsenal. I don't think it would ever meet the lofty heights of the limbs against Bournemouth at home. And that's probably a moment that I look back on quite fondly. But still, some good moments that we've shared, that we've been in the ground for, and I'm hoping still more to come. What do you feel about that, Jace?
Yeah, I mean, 2024 overall has been a great year. There's been a lot of good memories. I think the stats you raised are really interesting because I think if those stats are overinflamed from our performance last season, that's the only thing. This is my, this kind of does feed into my RR because I'm a little bit counter your positive vibes, I guess. Yeah, like if we look at clean sheets, expect that with the quality of our defense, etc. But the goals scored, if you remember the beginning of this year, we were hitting like 5 at home against Sheffield United and 5 or 6 away at West Ham, and we went on that phase of just scoring 5 and 6 in multiple games, and I think it really overinflated our average goals per game scored. And I think that if you look at this season, it's been a polar opposite. If you look at us, I think we are 4th for XG in the league. We're not in the top 4. Goals-based XG, I think we're as low as 8th or 9th. Shots per 90, we're low as 8th or 9th. against Premier League sides. So that where we are in regards to some of these stats is quite low. If we look at Liverpool this year, and this is my main my rip roaring review, just to be clear, is goals. Where the hell are the goals? That was mine, because we're just not scoring enough to win the title. Defenses win games, but goals win titles. Something that I think Gunnar Blog said on his podcast, and we don't have the goals. I think I talked to you on the tube on the way back. We were talking about the stats, right? And yes, Ipswich's XG was 0.04 because we shut the game down, but ours was 1.94, and we only scored one goal. Another good stat I stealing from Gunnar Blog and the Arse blog I was listening to earlier. They were talking about Liverpool's XG, and only out of all the games they played this season, they've scored 2 or more goals in every game bar two. And if you look at our equivalent, we've scored in 8 games, we've scored 0 or 1 goal max. And that's cost us 14 points, they said. That's massive. Liverpool are completely outperforming us on goals, and I want to talk about it.
I want to talk about it in the next section as well, because I think you've touched. I think you're wrong, and why I think you're wrong. Let's go on to this section, because it is going to feed into this a little bit. This section, by the way, is a world without Saka, because obviously Saka is now out for a minimum of 2 months, probably more. Yeah. And we're going to have to deal with that. And we're going to have to deal with the world without Saka. And let's go on to that. But I want to touch upon the point that you just raised there. I don't think Liverpool are outperforming us. I think Mohamed Salah is outperforming us. Mohamed Salah, 40% of Liverpool's big chances have come from Mo Salah. He is their top goal scorer. He is their talisman. They are only 5 goals ahead of us in goals scored. Only 5 goals. But it's Mohamed Salah. And there was a time, I can't remember the exact quote, but I did look it up. There was one part, and I think even Arteta said this after United, we need more magic moments. And there was a quote he did maybe a year ago where he talked about wanting to buy a player that could change games. I can't remember the exact quote that he kind of said, but he basically said he needed a player that had spark, that had ingenuity, that had the ability to transform the game. Mohamed Salah is a player of that ilk. He can transform games on his own. Ronaldo, there's players of yesteryear that are like these players that can easily transform games. Saka, albeit I love Saka, and Saka's our best player by far and away. I also don't think he can create a lot of magic on his own. He needs other players around him to perform, namely Ødegaard, I would say, is probably the one that connects with him best. But we don't have that player. And we're gonna have to talk about, like I say, a world without Saka, because he is our most dynamic and most performant player. We're going to need more of these magic moments to compete with the likes of Liverpool, because, like I say, I don't think they're outperforming us. I think they have Mohamed Salah, and he is just having an absolutely unreal season.
So let me ask you a question then. So we're going to talk about transfer window incoming. We're going to talk about a little bit about who we think we should be going for, or whether we're going to keep our powder dry. And I've got views on that, strong views on that. But when it comes to Salah, do you think that there's a dip to come? If you look at, again, I listened to our blog in the gym yesterday, and it's stuck in my mind massively. But we've talked about this before as well, how we performed in our first campaign 2 years ago, competing for the title versus how we competed last year. We talked about the differences of us being really slow in the build-up in the first half of the season, and the second half of the season, putting our foot down on the gas and proper going for it. And it was almost like Mikel was learning the lessons from the first season, where we lost steam towards the end. We dropped off. We lost the league, and that is something that we saw last season. We tried to amend, and you could argue that is now a process and a lesson learned, and that's exactly what we're doing this year. We assume that Liverpool, with their nous and their players who have been in many league title challenges before and have won the league, have that expertise and knowledge already. But maybe Arne Slot doesn't, because he's not been in a Premier League title race before. It's his first year. And so do you think that inevitable drop-off will come for Liverpool? Will it come for Salah directly? Or are they going to ride this out?
Do I think a drop-off is going to happen? Yes. Do I think there's enough of a drop-off that it'll make the door ajar for us? No, is my probably answer at the moment. 9 points. They're going to beat Everton, I think, unless it'd be interesting to see how they approach that game when it does get reorganised, because obviously they drew with us, they drew with City, an absolutely dirty, filthy low block that we and others have been unable to unlock in recent times, at least. It'd be interesting to see how Liverpool approach that game. But let's say they're 9 points clear. That's a big gap. That is a 6-game swing. You know, three games either side that are going to have to go one way or the other, at least, for us to get an opportunity. I did have a look at this, though, that we have played an enormity of our away tough games already this season. Liverpool is probably the only one that we haven't yet that we need to go to. And I think you said this on the tube when we were talking about this. It's a ground we're going to have to go to and we're going to have to win. And we don't usually.
It's the only ground we don't win usually. Like,
yeah,
got better in the last few years where we've been drawing and not losing, because sometimes you used to go to Liverpool and get absolutely humiliated.
Yeah,
right?
we did. Yeah,
but this year has to be different. Like, Klopp's no longer there, because I remember, Mikel and Klopp going at it on the touchline, G'd up Liverpool fans and etc. And history tells the story of that. But we have no excuse. We have to go to Liverpool and win if we want any chance of winning the league. A draw is not good enough.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. But when we played Liverpool at home, I looked at my tweet back when we did this. I think we ended up with a back four of like Partey at right back, Kiwior, who was left back. We ended up with a ramshackle back four. None of them are starters. We didn't have Gabriel, we didn't have Saliba, we didn't have X, Y, and Z, and it was 2-2. And that's another moment that we look back on at the start of this season. Like, injuries have cost us, red cards have cost us, silly refereeing have cost us. Well, we are where we are. To your point, Liverpool drop-off, I think, has to come. I don't think anybody can sustain. They're currently on, what are they on, 40? They're on 40 points? I can't remember. 42 points they're on at the moment. So let's say they're on course at the halfway point of the season, 48 points. That's a 96-point season. There's only a handful of teams that have done that, them included. It's just difficult. And it's hard to keep up that level of intensity, that level of press, that level of... I would also say luck. I've talked about this on the pod before, and I know it might seem a bit sensationalist, I guess, but they have had a great deal of luck. They've played a lot of teams when they don't have certain players available to them. They play City when they don't have Rodri. They play us when we don't have, I think was it Rice? I can't remember who it was, but we were definitely missing the spine of our team when they played us. They've just had a good amount of luck. And that we had that last season, wind in our sails a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think I said it last year and got absolute abuse from Liverpool fans, but I said it was jammy. They are just jammy, and it feels continued. They got to drop.
They do have to drop, but whether or not they're going to, I suppose, is to your point, whether you think they are or not. I do want to talk, because we talked about a word about Saka. Let's quickly have a look before we look at the transfers and stuff. Let's look at this game in particular, because I think there's only one. Martinelli filled in as the winger replacement for Bukayo Saka in this game. He had 0 shots. He had 0 key passes. He had 0 dribbles completed. I think the biggest thing that stood out to me, he was up against Davis, who was Ipswich left back. I've never heard of him. I don't know who he is. No offense to the guy or Ipswich. Martinelli could not get any change out of him at all, to the point, and we talked about this at halftime, in the ground, because we were closest to it, because that was the wing that we sit on and we could see. He got to the point where he was just trying to force it. Like, he'd literally bulldoze into the player to try and get the ball past him, and he just couldn't. It was an abject performance, from my opinion, and I just think that for a player that's trying to make a mark for himself in that position, he's lucky to the fact that we don't have another option, really. I mean, the only other option or alternative is Jesus right wing, Havertz up top. That's it.
Yeah, it's a really. I feel conflicted with this. I'll start by saying I'm not a journalist. We are just fans who talk about Arsenal. There's no. When we critique as a fan, not from a journalistic perspective. And there is an immense frustration watching Martinelli at the moment. he is, as you say, running with his head down. Like he literally just run straight into the guy. He didn't attempt to go round him. He just he didn't look up. And it's not the first time we've noticed this. Like we've been talking about this in previous pods, previous games, but it was exposed to us massively because we sit on the corner flag, and in the first half, Martinelli was running at that area of the pitch, and he just kept running into the guy. He couldn't take him on. He couldn't go round him like Saka would go round him, either go far byline or he would cut in and use Odegaard. Martinelli wasn't using Odegaard as much. Odegaard also I observed wasn't passing as much out to the width. It's like that trust, that connection's not there. And the end product's not there in that stance. We've talked about in previous pods, we need to improve the quality of our wingers. Martinelli is not going to be what we thought he was going to be when we gave him the contract. And he's a great squad player, rotation player, but he's not, I don't think he is for where we're going at this moment in time. Unless he improves, he's not good enough for our starting 11, and it's a problem. And it's not, we do have a Saka-shaped hole, and we need another level of quality in there. And this goes back to what we were talking about right around goals. We need, if Saka's not in that squad, we don't win the league. Or if we don't have someone who's at a level above what we have on the wings right now, we don't win the league. I think Saka's contributed in the last 3 seasons, like 31% of all of our goals have been contributed by Saka. Right, that is a big hole and avoid.
We cannot replace him.
Right, Pep, calm down. But yeah, it's a problem, and Martinelli is incredibly frustrating at the moment. I feel like I'm always beating up on the guy, so I do feel very cautious about it. But performances are performances, and I'm not seeing it.
You can only assess what's put in front of you, right? And I would also the biggest, and I think this is the most criminal thing to me. We talked, and I'm sure I've mentioned this on the pod before. My argument was always he was better than Luis Diaz, is what I'd argued with a friend of ours who's a Liverpool fan. And at the time, I think last season or the start of the last season, he had some incredible stats. He was putting away goals, he was assisting, he was dominant in his performance. He just doesn't seem to be developing. That's the worst thing for me at the moment. It doesn't, he's at an age where he should be continuing, like Saka. You can see Saka developing, trying new things, being different about his play, approaching the game differently, being more dynamic, more strength, more speed, whatever you want to call it. For a player who you think is approaching his best years or coming up to them, he should be developing, and he seems to be regressing. And he doesn't seem to be, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. He doesn't seem to be learning anything new.
I always remember when he joined and he was like, I model my game on Ronaldo and Cristiano, not the Brazilian.
I was going to say, which one?
And if you model yourself on Cristiano Ronaldo, if you model yourself on him as a winger, back when Cristiano was a winger, because there was one point where the legs went and he just became this amazing goal scoring machine down the middle, right? That's when he kind of played a bit of the Havertz role, but was probably a bit more potent in front of goal than Havertz. But if you're modeling himself as a winger, Cristiano Ronaldo was not an Arsenal-style winger. He wasn't. He was. I mean, you can see those traits in Martinelli. The fact that you do a step over, you run directly at the defense and you try and get round them, or you just, and then you try and whip the cross in, or you try and cut in and shoot. But you can see that quite directness and straightness. Like Saka's not quite as direct. He will always use Odegaard. He will always move to one side or the other. He won't run straight at the player. And sometimes that did used to frustrate me. But I've actually observed over the course of the last year and realized that actually that's more effective than running straight at the defender. And that always sticks in my mind, Martinelli, when he said that. And because I can see it and I'm not seeing a change in it. It's like that's how he knows how to play football and he doesn't know another way. And that's a problem. So, yeah, I mean, the other thing was, Gabby, you mentioned so I think the answer right now is Gabby Jesus on the right. The reason why is because he has an amazing ability to interchange passes and 1-2s with players. You saw that against Ipswich. He wasn't as potent. I mean, he didn't really get many opportunities. In fact, the one opportunity he did get, he scored it, but it was offside, obviously, and it was a great finish. But he didn't really get the same level of opportunity against Ipswich because the way they played, and we'll talk about that. But his ability to connect and interchange with other players on the field, 1-2s, is more reminiscent of what Saka does. And he's able to twist and turn. He does have a bit of pace. He was a Duracell bunny against Ipswich. He was running everywhere. He didn't get any end product really, but he was all over the place, chasing balls and pressing and doing what he needed to do. I think he is in the moment unless we sign someone, he's the answer, and he has to go out on that wing. It's the only thing I can see that's going to work.
Okay, let's think a little bit then on January, because it is fast approaching. We do have some work ahead of us. I think one thing that we talked about in the ground that's worth bringing up here. You look at that bench that we had, and we effectively had one attacking option in Ethan Wanyeri. With the injuries that we have, there's been talk, and I think we briefly said beforehand it might have been debunked, that Fabio Vieira could be recalled. Obviously, we've got the potential that Nelson could even been recalled, right? But we're still in 4 competitions here, and our success really does hinge on us bringing in something in the transfer window. If we're really genuinely serious about contending on all fronts, you can't look at that bench and look at how threadbare our squad is currently and think that we've got the ability to challenge on those 4 fronts and get something out of it. With that, we have money, we have something available. January is never a good time to do a deal. But there are players that we've been talking about for a while on the pod, and it feels like now is the time that done is better than perfect for me. I say this at work all the time because we strive to look for perfection in all aspects of life. I'm sure most of us do. But there are elements where good will do. Good is enough. And that's kind of what I feel that we need. Out of the players that are available, Jace, who and where do you think we should be putting our money where our mouth is?
So I think we have to put our money where our mouth is. I've already talked about the goals and everything. The fact that we're down in comparison to Liverpool, we have to score to win the league. I think I can never pronounce his name correctly, so I'll let you say it. But the winger at Bournemouth, for me,
Semenyo,
I think is the answer. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is I think he wouldn't command an extravagant fee. You're not talking the 80, 90, hundreds of millions. I think a Bournemouth as a side, they are a team that maintain their consistency in the Premier League when they do stay up through being able to cash in on talent. The same with Brentford, both of those teams, and even Brighton, you can argue. All of these teams have a model where they all begin with B. Jokes. That was just realised that. But they all have to kind of cash in on their talents to maintain that sustainability in the Premier League. And so you can see an option where he could be a 40 to 50, maybe 55 million pound option, which in the grand scheme of how much a world-class winger costs, is not exactly. I wouldn't say that that's an extravagant fee in today's market. He's also Premier League proven already. I think this is the thing we need. If we bring anyone outside of the Premier League in, they've got to have that adjustment time to the league, the intensity of the Premier League. Whereas if you bring in someone in who already knows and understands that intensity, it's just about adjusting a little bit to our system. I think that's going to stem us much better. And then additionally, the thing for me that I really like is he has a nice balance of a few things. The directness that Saka kind of lacks a bit. I know Martinelli has it, but his directness is too direct. He'll just run at the player. But he has that little bit of spring of pace because I think Saka isn't as quick. He's much more interplay. So having that pace is important, but also with the ability to have that interplay. And then he shoots. He actually shoots. And that's important, right? Getting your shots away is really, really important from sides of the pitch, opposed to just being direct. So, yeah, I think for me, he's the one that I would like us to see. If you're asking me for a backup, I always love Matoma. I've got a thing for Matoma. Obviously, he's more of a left-sided answer than a right-sided answer, but you could put Matoma on the left and have Jesus or Saka on the right. Even Trossard, you could bounce out there. But those are the two that for me stand out. Is obvious no-brainers. When it comes to January.
I think that the thing is that what you mentioned, and I agree with you on the Premier League proven part, because it's we need someone to hit the ground running. We're gonna have to be quite bullish in the market, and it's something that I've not seen us really do for a while in terms of Declan Rice was kind of one, but I'd also say that the way that Arsenal have currently been doing business a lot is persuade the player, and then the club will have to follow suit because they can't go against the player's wishes. And a lot of that has been, I suppose, making relationships with a player beforehand, selling them the dream, getting them involved in the project, and then going to the club thereafter and kind of getting the deal done. I don't think we're going to be in a position to be able to do that in this respect because time is not on our side.
Yeah, we drag out all our transfers so much longer.
But we try and save a few quid. At the moment, we're going to have to pump some money into this, and we're going to have to do it quick. And I know the players you mentioned, there's that, whether it's those, whether it's Kudus, whether it's you can even look at I would say, because you look at that team, the echelons of team just below us. You've mentioned Bournemouth, you've mentioned Brighton. I'm also saying look at Spurs. I know that like we said before, Kulusevski is one that he looks like a good player.
No, we're not going to sign Kulusevski. Yeah, we're not signing from Tottenham. That's just not going to happen.
All right, whether it's okay, well, fine. When you look further afield, because I know a lot of people have talked about Aola, they've talked about Lookman, those kind of players, like you say, are going to take some time to really suit our style of play in our system. And so I say the option of good is better than perfect is available to us. I think it's in the Premier League, and I think we're going to have to spend a great deal of money to get it.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is Lookman's an interesting one because he's not Premier League proven, but he knows the Premier League. He was at Everton, he is British. And the only other thing that might be quite enticing about him is the fact that I think he would command, based on his contract that's with Atlanta, I think it's 2026 it runs out. Basically, we could get a price cut deal for him. I think he could be a cheaper option. But it feels Lookman, as much as he's been amazing, I remember watching Europa League final where he tore Leverkusen to shreds. He feels more like a Trossard signing than a proven starting winger in the Premier League. He doesn't, you almost need to be able to say that the winger we're going to bring in, we're basically, in my mind, taking our summer transfer window plans and moving them forward 6 months out of necessity. And I think that what that means is that when Saka's back, this other winger we buy probably needs to be able to start on the left.
But that's what I say. I think you're going to have to look for a few square pegs in round holes in this scenario. You're going to have to somewhat concede on Arteta's non-negotiables when it comes to signings. There are a few, like I say, utility is one that you'll mention there. It's something that Arteta looks for, and a lot of the players that he looks for, they have to play in a lot of positions. They have to be quite dynamic. They have to be somewhat of a utility that can be placed anywhere. They also need to be of an age profile. Like you look at Lookman, he's 27. He's not going to get any younger, and it's very rare at the moment. I know Trossard's the example. It's rare that Arteta kind of goes for a player that's over their best years. And these are the things that I think he's going to have to look at and kind of go, you're going to need some of that specificness, experience to bring in. I know we've talked a lot about wingers as well. For me, and I know you're probably with me here, I would say, so there's talk that Newcastle want 150 million for Alexander Isak, which is a lot of money. But sometimes, Jason, well, fine. If you want to say it's too much, that you're within your gift to do so. For me, it's just one of those things where we paid that for Declan Rice. Declan Rice we know we needed that player. He's the one that's going to fit the system. He's the one. If you went and got Alexander Isak now, he is the Thierry Henry regen that we need, in my opinion. I think he's the player that can take us. We're going to get 5 to 6 good years out of him. He's only on 120k at Newcastle. We can give him a big wage. I think we just need to slap that money on the table and test the nerve of Eddie Howe and the board at Newcastle to see what wiggle room there potentially is there. Because I do feel that he's proven he can be that player. It's very, very direct, take shots. There's a lot of other striking options as well, I realise. And I do think, I can't see it happening. I can see us keeping our powder dry for Sesko. I still think that was the one that we're looking at.
Sesko, yeah, I think that's the one we really want. But I have not watched him close enough to really be like, oh, yeah, he's the one. There obviously is Osimhen keeps getting talked about, but I don't think his personal off-the-pitch attributes fit the culture of what Arteta would want at the club. Even though it could be a cheap deal because he's obviously gone. You know, Napoli would want to cash in, and he's gone. You know, he's on loan in Turkey, right?
That's how much is it? Yeah,
yeah. That's how much they don't want him. But I don't think he's the fit. So Isaac, I agree, is the one. But I think 150 million. I don't think we have 150 million. We had to sell players to buy in the window. Remember that there's a FFP and all of these things. We're trying to be a sustaining model. I don't think that there's 150 million to slap down on Isaac, to be completely honest. So I think it has to be. I'd say Isaac for 100 million, yes, but 150 million now, that's not happening. I don't see that. Sorry.
Way to piss on my chips, Jace. Right. Anything else you want to talk about in the world without Saka? Only the fact is that I think we're entirely fucked without him.
Well, all I'll say is that we know we need to buy, and we need to buy next week, basically. It cannot be look how many games we got in January. It's ridiculous.
I know, it is mad. But this is the thing. This is so antiquated when it comes to Arsenal. It's just not something we do. We are not very reactionary when it comes to transfers. We don't get our business done quick. We're known for not spending a lot of money. There are some outliers to that stat, of course. But this is where, for me, it just all signs point to us not doing it. I just can't fathom a world. Like when I read that Fabio Vieira might be recalled, that was like, that feels Arsenal. You know what I mean? That's not the answer. Another attacking player on the bench, fantastic. But if we didn't feel that player was good enough to make a start, why would we want to bring him back when other players? It just doesn't make sense to me. But it made sense in the fact that it felt very Arsenal-like transfer or bit of business.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I guess we have to see who's stepping in and covering in the interim in Evo's shoes and see whether they're prepared to take risk.
Yeah, I mean, I'd also keep an eye on Martinelli just to see. We have got a lot of games. We have got in the first week of January, we've got 2, and then we've got Brentford, Newcastle, United. It's all within the first 10 days or 12 days.
Well, look at the next games. Well, away at Brentford, away at Brighton. Those are both very hard games considering the form that those teams have. So those are not easy. Then you say Newcastle, then United, and then I think it's Spurs, and then Villa. These are all
They're not easy. They're not easy games. I get what you're saying.
I mean, United actually are. It's hilarious, right? But United is probably the easiest game out of all of them because they are Newcastle, Villa, Brighton, Brentford. We're talking about consistent, proven Premier League teams now, and every game in the Premier League is hard. The only one where I'm like, this will be a doddle, this will be fun, will be Man United, because. But the thing is, I could also see us losing to Man United as well, just before I pee off our friends who are United fans. Because I feel like we'll need to rest players, and I just feel like the cup is the obvious time to rest players. We're in a semi.
I'd also say that Man United game is also one of those games where it's it's in its own bubble, it's in its own microcosm. You know what I mean? Anything can happen there, and it can debunk anything that happens anywhere else in the league. Yeah,
but so as much as we joke saying United is the easiest games, it won't be. It's always got its own thing to it. Though I am really enjoying on Instagram the news reporter from, I don't know, must have been some a TV show in Africa, and when he reads up the news, he goes Manchester United and just starts laughing. That's coming up every week because they just rechange the score. And I just get so much joy out of that. That's very funny.
I had to, while we were talking, I had to look this up because we talked in the green room about Matthias Cunha. I can't believe this, right? So he's played 18 games and he's got 10 goals and 4 assists, right? It's almost 1 in every game, almost. His stats are incredible. His XG is 4. Like, he's outperforming metrics like incredibly well. Like most players, obviously, they'll be pretty close. Obviously, he's outperforming, and you would expect that that's going to come down. So I know there's been a lot of talk about Matthias Cunha. Maybe he's just literally outperforming at the moment, and is just getting, riding the luck while it lasts.
I didn't realize those were. There's my voice gone. Sorry. I didn't realize those. I didn't realize those were his stats. In that case, I'll just slap money on the table, give it to Wolves right now.
I would also say though, Jace, we've not had a lot of luck with Brazilian players, so in recent years at least.
Yeah, but I understand that. But I also think if it's he could just fit in quite easily with culturally if we've already got people to make it.
We have a Martinelli, Jesus, Cunha front line, all Brazilian, all the time. Right. There were, I want to talk about a big positive. We're going to talk about more positives in a second, but I want to talk about a big positive because we talked about this guy in the last pod and we waxed lyrical about how good he was and how assured he was. We're going to talk about him again. Myles Lewis-Skelly playing as left back again during this game. And he looks like he doesn't look out of place. He looks like he's always been there. He looks so good for an 18-year-old. Quite incredible to think. I don't know the kind of stuff you were doing when you were 18, Jace, but it certainly wasn't playing for a Premier League football team, I'm sure. Tell me, what did you think about MLS's performance? Where do you think he fits now within this squad as we've got other left backs coming back to fitness?
I think he's first choice until someone can take the place from him. As I've already rinsed lyrical about how impressed I am by him. And what I saw against Ipswich just underlined that in regards to a couple of things. His strength, his ability of low center of gravity with that, the ability to be able to twist and turn in opposite direction while maintaining strength against players which are much bigger than him. He was amazing in the middle of the park because he kept dropping into the middle of the park, getting the ball, twisting and turning out of hard positions and running off with the ball. And it was brilliant. And that, to be able to do that at the age of 18, to have that strength in the Premier League, his body, I mean, that's ridiculous. And I was very proud. This kind of proud light is beaming from me in the ground. I was really excited by just what I've been seeing from him. The other thing I really loved was he is, when you see these young kids come in from the academy and from Hale End and come into the squad, like sometimes I worry they're going to be too shy, a little bit timid, like you got to adjust. No. He's aggressive. He gives it. I mean, I remember when, I can't remember who it was. There was an Ipswich player that basically pushed Gabriel off the pitch right in front of us.
That was Calvin Phillips, wasn't it?
Yeah. And my MLS just went straight, basically squared up to him, and it was brilliant. And obviously the ref had to get involved, but just having that little bit of, nastiness about you as well isn't a bad thing. It's really exciting to see. I think he's already above Zinchenko in the picking. Yes, Calafiori may come back in, but I definitely think he's trusted by Mikel. If anything, it's great for us, but it's even better for England because I think England have had a left back problem for a long time. I think
Lewis-Skelly and Ben White, England, then, right?
Well, ironically, it's quite funny, right? Because if you put them in, you suddenly we always joked about the fact that we have an amazing talent going forward with England, but we have not the best defense. And I think if you put those couple of players in under Thomas Tuchel, I think the England team could be in the next tournament unstoppable. I really think if you have Ben White and MLS playing, I mean, to be fair, we've got handfuls of right backs, right? So you could probably put Trent at right back and move Ben White into the centre with John Stones maybe, or Mark Gay. And I think then you've got a really strong defence, and then you've just got to fix the front four working together. And when I say the front four, I mean Foden, Bellingham, Saka, and Ollie Watkins, because you should just bench Harry Kane anyway. But yeah, it's exciting. MLS, I think he's going to be a great talent for the future. I love him already.
It's interesting that the fact you mentioned he's obviously above Zinni in the pecking order, and Keller is TBC. I really like Calafiore, and I think he will be our starter once he's back to full fitness. But I would say that this only happened, and it's interesting because we've obviously talked about Saka earlier on. This only happened because of the injuries that we had. Let's be honest, Arteta wasn't prioritising his run in the first team outside of a few cup appearances because of the injuries that we've had. And this is the kind of thing that it's like a happy accident in respect to being able to get those chances and take them. And this is where the likes of Martinelli and others need to kind of like realize the opportunity that they have when it comes to other players being injured and the ability to step up and outperform and overperform where they need to be. Because I agree with you, everything about MLS during this game was incredible. It's like he's never not belonged in this squad. I would say so brave in being and showing availability, asking for the pass, taking the ball, running with it. There's not many players, you know, shrinking violets, I would say, that wouldn't take that opportunity and kind of maybe wouldn't ask for the ball, wouldn't run with the ball, wouldn't take risks, wouldn't be brave. He did all of that in spades. A lot of personality. Another Hale Ender as well, which is always great to kind of see and come through the ranks. I just want like we just have such a good. I was reading something also that like Saka obviously started as a left back or right back. I can't remember which side. It must have been right back, I'm assuming.
It was left back.
Was it left back? Was it? Okay, fine. So this is where I'm like, could this be the development journey that Myles Lewis-Skelly goes on here and moves into one of those wingers and becomes another kind of Saka-like regeneration for us? That would be something I would be interested in.
I see him as a midfielder.
Well, obviously he comes in very much like Zinchenko into that mould where he plays very much in the inverted role, comes into midfield, plays a lot. And we obviously played Declan Rice as a single pivot in this game because we probably didn't need anything else, let's be honest. So I agree with you, but maybe he makes that transition across the field. And a lot of players do go back in that transition, right? Usually because obviously the pace and the explosivity and the needs and the wants of being a winger or a forward is much greater than, say, being a right or a left back, or a traditional right and a left back, at least. Mm-hmm. It would just be interesting to see where his development goes and if he continues to develop, because we've talked about Martinelli's development. Something for our Hale Enders that's always been pretty good is the development that we've seen of those players turning into really good Premier League starters, even if they're not for us. You look at Iwobi now, or you look at ESR and the performances that some of them are putting under Fulham. They're good players. They're just not Arsenal. They're not good enough for Arsenal, but they're still very good Premier League players.
Yeah, I think we undervalue the academy, and especially since Per's taken over, the quality it's been coming out of there. I think it's a big credit to the work that he's done. I think that, you know, we actually need to. I don't know if Per's had a contract extension, or we never, you know, his kind of details of his contract and his agreements with the club are never released, but he's done an excellent job. I kind of want to see him tied down for a long time to run the academy. Hopefully that's giving him job satisfaction. He's looking at staying for a long time because what he's done is amazing. And we just need to keep bringing players through. I would say every few years we are bringing a good crop of youngsters through now into the squad, and it's just about Mikel having the confidence to play them. And I think MLS is I hope MLS is the first of many. I hope Mikel has changed his approach. I think you could argue, and I don't think I'm unfair in saying this, that he's not really given youth much of a chance. You know, Saka was already in the squad, but he inherited it. You know, he was a shining star. Emil Smith-Rowe didn't really get the opportunities. He did it in the early days when we needed him, but as soon as he could upgrade the quality in those certain areas of the pitch, ML, and obviously his injuries, you saw less opportunities. Reece was never really fully given the confidence. And this season, you've got MLS, who he's hopefully that's changed his perspective. On the other hand, you've got to look at, well, as you mentioned, we had one real attacking player on our bench against Ipswich, and let's be honest, we could have done with a few more goals, and he didn't bring him on, which was Ranieri. I mean, I was just thinking sub Martinelli for Ranieri. Let's just see what he can do in that position. We need to. We talked about not being stuck with that position at the moment.
Yeah.
What's the harm in giving that a try? Obviously, that he knows Ranieri much better than we do, and I think we just look at the attributes Ranieri has in regards of his ability with the ball close at his feet, kind of those quick turns, those quick feet in tight positions, and then you assume he's fast, and you think, oh, that's a good Saka replacement, but you didn't give it a go.
I mean, I would say this is the thing we talked about. This is Arteta's first job in management, and there are elements to things that he does and how he manages this team that I hope Jason's surviving. That he has to learn, he has to develop, and this is the thing with Arteta. Although we've really liked some of the things that Arteta has delivered and done so far for Arsenal, there are elements of his game that do need work, and he does need to learn from mistakes. He does need to grow. He does need to adapt. I wouldn't agree with you that when Yeri at right wing 1-0 against Ipswich at home was maybe the right. Like if we had a bigger lead, then I can see it, and we can try different things. That was there was a free kick in the last minute of the game Ipswich had that this could have been a very sour podcast, if we had have dropped those points, if that had turned into something different. I know they didn't create like anything that game, but there were moments, even when we were singing North London Forever. Also, just want to say that was obviously some discourse I saw on Twitter that talked about stop doing that, stop playing North London Forever over the start of the game. Which was interesting because I've actually feel it does kind of generate a bit more buzz and atmosphere into the ground towards the start of the game, which we don't. Yeah, I liked it, but if they had scored in the 6 seconds that was going over the start of the game, that would have been interesting.
It'd have been awkward, wouldn't it?
Yeah, incredibly.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel that we should have given him the opportunity. I think that he's already shown his ability to recover in the defensive positions. Ranieri, I've seen that this season when he has come on, his ability to win the ball back. I wasn't worried about bringing him on. And the only reason you could have left Martinelli on was in case we got a counter attack. But that was one other thing I wanted to briefly talk about was our style of play. That's got to change, especially without Saka. We need to have more counter attacking football. More direct, like we adjust to Trossard isn't the right kind of player. Jesus is, Martinelli is, but he needs to look up more. I feel the style of play needs to slightly change in the absence of Saka as well. We can't only have one way to play.
But that's not. I'd say one of the things we do is we do that quite often, right? That there are more than one ways to skin a cat, and we haven't found them yet.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and this has been a mixed pod. I just want to end by maybe looking at some of the positives, because for me, it was another dominant, controlled performance across all areas of that front line against another low block that we're finding challenging to break down. And it's good that we were able to find a way through with 11 men behind the ball that we weren't able to find against Everton. I do feel that we're refining the art of passing our teams to death. At some point, like I say, teams are unable to deal with that level of passing intensity and press for 90 minutes. Although I would say in the ground, it was quite boring at times. And that's the last few games that we've been to. We've come out going, well, that wasn't great. That wasn't that exciting. But there are some positives to look at. Was there any players in particular that stood out to you as a positive, even in that 1-0 victory against Ipswich, Chase?
Oh, I wasn't expecting that question. I already mentioned Jesus. I think he got a bit of critiques for maybe not being, it's like he has an on-off switch. The on switch only coming on against Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace only. He always turns up against Crystal Palace. And then he's like off for the rest of the season. But as I said, his energy that I think he brought to the front line, chasing and pressing, he didn't get the opportunity. As I said, he's got that finish. It was an amazing finish. The acuteness of the angle, he nutmegged the keeper, but obviously it was given for offside. But I think I think we've not seen the last of that. I'm hoping that comes back. The other player for me stood. I mean, the defense was great and solid, and we had it locked down, right? That wasn't really any major concern. I think Gabriel had a really good game, but it's just a
I
standard.
can't believe he didn't score that goal. I think he had a
Well,
back post header, and he was like a foot from goal, and somehow still went over the bar after heading it at the ground.
he scored enough goals this season. I think we can let him off.
Might do.
If we'd have lost or drawn, it'd have been a different question. But I think he gets away with it. Just.
Wow.
And then Timber. Timber's the other one that stand out for me in that game. He's really consistent. I love Timber. He's possibly one of my favourite players right now.
I'd agree with that. The fact that he's come back from that injury and hasn't looked like he's missed a step or anything is quite good. The other player I just want to talk about here, Declan Rice. I think that he shooting from distance, which I think is a thing that I'd like to see him do more, and he did, even when it's straight at the keeper, even when it's not testing him. I think at least putting some shots to kind of worry them, to put some kind of pressure on them is good. Carried the ball a lot. He was the sole pivot here. He was able to break up the play. I still, it's easy for you to kind of miss and forget what Declan Rice does because of the type of player that he is and the type of position that he plays in. It's not very glamorous. It's not very Hollywood. And on occasion he does score, obviously banging goals, ergo Man United. But it's good to see him coming back and kind of being at his best. I slightly, when he kind of looked a bit jaded, and I think that's part of the reason why he was subbed. I can't remember, we were talking about he had a broken toe, but maybe it's a hammy. We're in the dark times now somewhat, where we're going to have to protect our players quite a lot. And so it's very astute of Arteta to make sure that he is not risking them when we don't need to risk them in certain games. Like I say, I think you said it before, right? Ipswich's XG in this game was like almost nothing, right? Yeah. So taking him off and protecting him is the right thing to do. But I think he had a really good performance against Ipswich.
I would have liked to have seen him released more into the position he played against Palace.
I think because when he's playing with Partey, I think that's the kind of difference that they interchange with Havertz playing in that role today. It just wasn't. I don't know. Maybe you could risk it a bit more. Maybe you're right. We just kind of have this very protective nature when it comes to being counted on. We just don't want to get counted on because we do look quite vulnerable when we do.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just one side note: some people have said Havertz can start from the right. I don't know if I've ever seen him play on the right.
I said on the last pod that I'm sure, not here, but I'm sure at Chelsea he played as a right winger on occasion.
Maybe he's done it for
whether I want to see it, I'm not too sure. Because I just don't think I know we said this before, but he looks a bit like a giraffe when he plays like football. He doesn't seem, he seems a bit clumsy. He seems a bit haphazard. He doesn't seem to be, I've not seen him be pacey. He's got stamina, 100%, but I don't think he's very pacey.
No Saka.
Saka's got really good strength. I think he is able to protect the ball, and I just don't. It'd be interesting to see, but I don't feel this is the time when Arteta will experiment with other, square pegs in round holes.
Yeah, I just feel we're going to run out of. We're just going to tire all our players out. There's too many games and not enough squad players.
Not enough covers, yeah. Well, we need the likes of Sterling to come back, Jace. That's what we really need.
Ideally.
Right. That'll be Ipswich done. We are back again on New Year's Day away at Brentford. Hopefully that'll be 3 points, taking us or continuing our run in second place. Let's see how the Premier League games go today. If you're with us still, thank you very much for joining us. If you're watching on YouTube, please do give the video a like. Please do give the channel a subscribe, and please do leave a comment down below what you thought about this performance against Ipswich. Jace, if they are on and listening with their ears rather than watching with their eyes, what do we want our audience to do?
Yeah, just make sure on your podcast provider of choice, you subscribe to our feed. The latest episode will then be there. And please give us a star rating, 5 stars, please. Ideally, our Greg gets angry.
I do. We're not going to speak to you again before the new year. So happy new year to all of our listeners and viewers. Hope you have a good one, and we'll see you in 2025.
Cheers, guys. Have a good one.
Come on, you!